Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the 2023 Fantasy Baseball Team Previews here at the Fantasy Six Pack. I am your host, Jason Beckner. You can find me on Twitter at JRBex. I'm joined by my co host here, JP. You can find him at Twitter at DapScout. You can go ahead and do us a favor and go ahead and subscribe to our Fantasy Six Pack channel. You can get a ton of great content, including all these other team previews that will be coming out here next week or two leading up to your drafts, and great content all season long. Right after that, you can go head on over to fantasysixpack.net. You can find some more great content over there, as well as subscribe to be a member and get some great award-winning content as well. Today, JP, we're going to be talking about the Washington Nationals. Go ahead, go and jump right in right here to the starting lineup for the Washington Nationals. And leading off, we have Lane Thomas. Follow up that with CJ Abrams. And in the 3-hole, we have Joey Meneses. Hitting in the 4 hole is Keibert Ruiz, followed by Corey Dickerson, and then hitting 6th is Heimer Candelario, hitting 7th is Luis Garcia, and then followed by Dominic Smith, and rounding it out is Victor Robles. I think when looking at this lineup, I think the only name, maybe not the only, but one of the only names they would even maybe closely remotely target would be Joey Meneses. We saw him come up last year and just be really big spark plug for the Washington Nationals. Hit 33 home runs across 2 levels last year. Hit for high average when he did make it to the majors. Currently, he has an ADP of, I think it's actually surprisingly high. 197. I guess comparatively to the rest of the Nationals lineup, it's high. But what are your thoughts on Meneses going forward and for 2023?
My grandmother used to have a saying that used to be, friends don't let friends draft national players. So, that's how she raised me for the last 20 years. No, I'm kidding. Look, I want to avoid this entire team as much as possible. But if you're going to dip your toe into nationals, then yes, Meneses is great. But that price is betting on a 30-year-old who broke out last year, and he was an amazing story. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues, and he helped me, win a bunch of championships, and it was great. But you're, again, betting on a 30-year-old to continue that success, and I hope he does with all my heart. I am just going to avoid him unless I can get him 225 or later. The ADP you just quoted me seems a lot higher than what I've actually seen in drafts, where he is going earlier than I ever expected, and people are drafting him for this, for his numbers that they saw last season. And you know what? I'm going to let them do that all day long. I don't want that. Would I like to have him on my team? Sure, but not at that price in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it on the head here. I mean, he's basically a journeyman, 30-year-old that finally broke out in 2022. The power numbers really stood out. He's never had he's had one season where he hit over 20 home runs, and all of a sudden he hits 33 last year. So that's a little alarming. He did hit 324 last year with the Nationals. However, a lot of that is thankfully to his 371 BABIP. So we're going to see a little bit of regression to mean. I think he falls back down to his 260 average, if more along the lines of his career numbers. Again, I think I totally agree with you. The price tag is becoming way too high. He's becoming that name, right, that everyone's like, this is the sleeper, this is the breakout that you got to have, Joey Meneses. And we're going to start, at least, I think as we get closer and closer to draft season, we're going to start seeing that name and that ADP higher and higher. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's pushed up to 150, which is just absurd. I'm avoiding Meneses as well. If I can get him late, I'll throw a flyer on him, but I just can't put my faith into someone at 30. You don't ever trust a 30-year-old breakout. They just don't, they don't sustain that very long. I mean, other than Meneses, I mean, a little bit of some intrigue, I guess, with CJ Abrams, right? That a top prospect came over from the Padres. Kind of underwhelmed last year in his debut season. There is that pedigree there and that prospect status, or he's someone that might be worth, again, throwing a late round flyer on. But other than those two, I mean, you're gonna get some, if you're in some really deep drafts, You can maybe get some value out of Heimer Candelario. Lane Thomas is becoming one of those trendy names as well. I'm just not putting a lot of faith into him as well. Other than those few names, I mean, is there anybody else in this lineup?
Yeah, so I hate to do this to you, but you jumped over one of my absolute favorite players last year.
Okay.
Lane Thomas was one of my faves. Now, his OBP and it's like if you look at his end of the year numbers, nothing really kind of jumps out. I mean, he had 17 home runs, but he also played almost 150 games. But I really think you're looking at somebody who can provide, you know, pretty cheap power and speed, especially with these new stolen base rules and sizes and things of that nature. I mean, getting on base, 300 ish, and at the top of this lineup where there's not a lot going on, I really think you have the opportunity there to buy in cheaply with Lane Thomas. He provided some excellent numbers that I can attest to, at spots throughout the year. Now, if you're in a daily league, Lane Thomas all day long play, play who he's doing, who he's matching up against with pitching. But
Yep.
if you have best ball, Lane Thomas, if any of those types of things, I would love to know what his ADP is because I'm sure he's not getting any respect this season again. But definitely, I would like to highlight about 6 different line items. Lane Thomas is definitely somebody to get cheap and will provide you some good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, good call. He was just basically the odd man out in St. Louis, right? And probably coming on here to Washington, getting the playing time and kind of proving that maybe he can produce if given the at bats. I think yeah, you're right. So we'll give him the top 3 of the lineup, and then we'll call it there after the top 3 of this lineup.
Right. No,
Let's go ahead and
absolutely.
let's go ahead and jump over to the starting rotation here. Starting off is they're going to be their ace is Josiah Gray, followed up by Patrick Corbin. Their 3 pitcher is going to be Trevor Williams. The number 4 starter is Cade Cavalli, and the 5th starter is Mackenzie Gore. I think if you're running out Josiah Gray as your SP1, you might have some issues in the ERA department this season.
Right.
Patrick Corbin hasn't been good since he left Arizona. Yeah, I mean, this is just like and then again, Mackenzie Gore, it's that flashy name again. Post prospect hype came over again in the Juan Soto trade with CJ Abrams. I'm not sure I'm targeting any of these players, even at their ADP or after. Is there anything that any of these players that you might be interested in?
Yeah, when I pick them up after some of my players get hurt, and I have to pick up, somebody to fill out my rotation, that's when I'm going to get one of these guys. If I have to draft any of these, fine gentlemen, I really did not plan well during my draft. I'm going to avoid this entire starting rotation as much as possible. Definitely not something that I can see good things happening from top to bottom. Yeah, it's some pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even right now, Fangraphs has Cade Cavalli listed as their number 4. I mean, he was a former number 1 pick of theirs. That hasn't shown the greatest results in the minors. Came up last year, made 1 start, got absolutely obliterated. I
Right.
think he's still a little, still some more developing to do. So I don't even know if he makes a starting rotation. He definitely still needs some more seasoning down in the minors. More of a dynasty asset than he is like a redraft. Mackenzie Gore, the book is still out on. We haven't seen him, prove anything really at this point. So if you can, which you probably can, avoid any of these pitchers at your expense.
Look, the one person that I'm gonna kind of point out here, that I had tapped into last year was Tanner Rainey, who I'm not really sure what his current status is, but that's somebody that I know is on the Nationals. But yeah, avoid this at all costs.
Yeah. Well, if the starting rotation was anything of any indication of what the bullpen's look like, you're right. So we have the Kyle Finnegan as the closer. Carl Edwards Jr. is their setup guy, as well as Hunter Harvey. Victor Arano is their mid. Erasmo Ramirez, Mason Thomas, and Paulo Espino as their mid rotations, and then Thad Ward as their long reliever right now. I mean, eh, nobody in this lineup or in this bullpen am I targeting. Even Kyle Finnegan in a saves only league. I mean, the guy's that his career high is 11 saves, and this team I can't even envision winning 60 games, let alone saving more than 11 games.
Yeah.
And even if you're worried about like if you want to try and get some cheap holds or something, I can't imagine them being ahead very much in the seventh, eighth innings to give
Right.
Carl Edwards, Hunter Harvey a chance on your team.
Right.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'd
No.
be steering clear of the bullpen as well.
No, look, in a saves only league, I wouldn't touch any part of this bullpen. There's not a black horse candidate, and you're right. I don't think they're going to win anything, win much. But if you're in a dynasty league or if you're in a holds plus saves league or anything like that nature, some names that you can kind of bet on, right? Hunter Harvey was a top prospect with the Orioles and just kept getting hurt. But when he could throw and when he was amazing. I would throw him on the back of any bullpen that, again, depending on the size of your roster, really great kind of person to keep an eye on. Most likely, if you can see any type of movement there, Hunter Harvey or Rasmus Ramirez are most likely going to be the guys bubbling to the top just because we've seen them before. Paulo Espino, another name, and of course, Thad Ward. But yeah, if you can avoid this whole mess, do it. I just can't see anything good happening here. This is definitely the 5-day old sushi at the gas station.
Yeah, good comparison there. Well, hopefully there's brighter days ahead for the Washington Nationals because it will not be 2023. It will not be their season.
Right.
But that's going to go ahead and wrap up the Washington Nationals team preview. Like I said, you want to go ahead and subscribe to the Fantasy Six Pack channel. We got a bunch of fantasy baseball team previews rolling out these next couple of weeks, leading up to your drafts. About other great content along the way and all season long. But that'll do it for this episode. And until next time.